In the studio, I have Dr. Timothy McKnight in here, and we're going to talk a little bit about factors that make us age quickly. How you doing, doctor?
Doing great. How are you, Robert?
I'm just, when I can talk to a doctor and not have a copay, I'm just as happy as can be.
Well, I'm glad I can give you a free visit.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we had kind of pre-talked about was people getting older and factors that just cause you to get aged a lot quicker than maybe the time or the yearly age or the amount of time.
Right.
It's just your body and things.
Right. Yeah, so there's a couple of things. First of all, what makes us age and get older or even have arthritis is oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is a chronic inflammation. So anything that causes chronic inflammation is going to cause us to hurt more, feel like we're getting older faster. So we have to do things to try to block or slow down that inflammatory process. But when we talk about aging, and you mentioned physiological age versus chronological age, there is a difference. Some people look a lot older than they are or younger than they are. And this, we've talked about this before. This is how quickly the telomeres in our chromosomes, how quickly they age. So the telomere, if you think of the chromosome as like a shoestring with a plastic cap on each end of the shoestring, that would represent the chromosome, and the telomere is that plastic cap on each end. So every time the cell divides, it's like you're taking that shoestring and you're cutting a little piece off the very end of that plastic cap. So after so many cell divisions, now you're left with a shoelace that has no cap over the protective end of the shoelace, and now the shoelace starts to unravel. And that's what happens when we hit that magic age where each of us really decline quickly. So it's all about how fast do we do that? How fast do we shorten those telomeres? And we know there's several factors that cause us to age faster. So things that make us age quickly, this is common sense to most people. Smoking, lack of exercise, unhealthy diet, specifically high-protein diets, excessively high-protein diets, low-fiber diets, and just too many calories. We also know that stress ages us. So they did one really interesting study on this, and they found that physiological stress or just emotional stress is the equivalent of taking 10 years away from your life. So people that live with a lot of stress, they actually shorten those telomeres at a faster pace and they age more quickly. They also did a really interesting study with obesity, and people who are obese, that takes off 8.8 years of our life, and that's actually worse than smoking. So when you're talking about aging quickly, being obese causes us to age faster than smoking would.
Well, I'm sitting here with sucking my gut in while a doctor's looking at me talking about obesity. But along with that, when you talk about physiological and chronological, is that what makes somebody that, like me, I'm 22 years old and I look like I'm 65, right? But does that cause you to look older than you are?
Absolutely. And so you look at somebody, when you see somebody that looks really old and they say, well, like you said, I'm 25 or 22, in the back of your mind, you think, boy, they look a lot older than they are. Why is that? Well, if you think about this, people who are out in the sun a lot, their skin ages more quickly. So sunbathers, especially the fair-complected people that burn, at least the skin ages faster. Then you think of, we've all seen these pictures of somebody who is a healthy person, and then as they go on this path of either alcoholism or crack cocaine or severe drug abuse, we see how quickly they age. So we know that drugs do this too. But we also know that people who've lived under a lot of stress, as you watch them age, they seem to age more quickly. So there are, again, those are stress factors that cause more inflammation. If we're talking about things that slow down the aging process and make us, feel better for longer, it's the common sense things that we've talked about. It's a high fiber diet, it's low protein, it's exercise, diets rich in omega-3 fatty acids, not the omega-6s that you find in vending machines and fast food restaurants, and then it's low calorie intake. If you want to live longer, the people that live to 100, they do two things. They eat much less than what they need, and they walk a lot. Now, these are people that live, out in remote areas around the world where they don't have access to a lot of our technologies. So they're growing their own food, and there's not a lot of food, but they're walking, a couple miles maybe for a pitcher of water, and they're just very active that way. So those are the things that slow down the aging process, but a lot of us do things that really accelerate it, and then we wonder why we feel so terrible.
Yeah. Now, can this be genetic? I know families that they had an article the other day where 3 sisters celebrated their birthdays together. One was 100, one was 102, one was 106, and they were just as chipper and everything else, and it was all, of course, one family. So I was just wondering.
That's absolutely true. And generally speaking, so we've seen that people that, everybody in their family seems to make it to 90. Well, those people, for whatever reason, the telomeres shorten at a slower pace. But then there are some people that maybe they were destined to live longer, but they've done things lifestyle-wise. We also know, for example, families that have a strong family history of heart disease, they can die in their 50s and 60s, and their children are susceptible to the same things. But it's not genetics that really dictates our health, and that's a real strong message that I want people to hear. It's where we put our genetics. Do we put our genetics in a healthy environment or a sick environment? Because we know that it's the environment that triggers what happens with our genes. If you take 2 identical twins and you separate them, and one twin lives in a very loving environment where there's access to healthy eating and healthy lifestyles, and the other one is just a completely different environment, the aging process in 30 years, you're going to see it very clearly. So it really is the environment. We call that epigenetics. It's the environment that really dictates the outcome of our health. It's not necessarily our genes. Clearly, our genes predispose us to things, but it's really where we put ourselves, the environment we put ourselves in. And that was something that Louis Pasteur always thought, it's the genes, it's the genes. On his deathbed, he said, no, it's the environment of those genes. It's the environment of the cells. An unhealthy environment will cause the cells to become sick and age more quickly than a healthy environment.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you too is that something that it's in our minds. In other words, as we age ourselves, our minds are relatively sharp,
yes.
But our bodies, and we don't realize it. And we said, okay, well, we can go out and play softball. We can go out and work on a car. And we go, all of a sudden, your body's saying no. And softball was a good example where I hit the ball one time and ran. And I thought, well, I did that pretty good. Well, but then I realized somebody videotaped it, and I watched it, and where you remember the Benny Hill show. But I looked like Benny Hill running around there, and but my body, I couldn't, it just, my body's getting, but my mind's going, yeah, sure, I can do that.
That is a really good point, Robert. I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of this does have to do with our mindset. And, I started after, it was probably close to 40 years, I started, maybe 35 years, I started pole vaulting again. And I thought, geez, this doesn't, it feels fun. I feel like I'm that 17-year-old kid again out at the track. But then when I saw the video of it, I'm like, oh, that's not what I remember it being. But I never saw the video in real life when I was that age.
Right.
But I would go down to the track and I would practice sprints. Now, a sprint is just it was a gradual sprint where I'd start slow and go faster and faster, walk back, do it again. I didn't want to pull a muscle. So this was perceived exertion. I perceived in my mind that I was running fast. Now, if somebody were to watch me, it probably was not impressive. But for me, the perception was, hey, I'm doing pretty good. Probably good that I didn't watch myself. I would have been discouraged, right?
That's the problem I had, that video was proof.
Yes, but I guess the point is that there's nothing wrong with feeling young and continuing to do things that you like to do, but you have to do them gradually. And as you mentioned, you injured your knee. So when that happens, it's like, okay, why did I injure that knee? Was it already pre-injured or susceptible? And how can I fix that? Because I just saw somebody yesterday who's having a lot of back pain, and she was told that she needed to go to pain management by the orthopedist. I said, well, wait a minute, let's look at this X-ray, this MRI. Okay, you have you have structurally nothing that says that this is irreversible. This is mechanical, this is muscular. Let's address those things before we go to pain management, because often if you address the root cause in the mechanics, you can feel a lot better, and that's all we're looking for. I don't really care if I got a herniated disc in my back as long as I don't feel pain. I don't want that MRI to say, oh, look, this is bad, you're herniated, and I don't even have pain. Oh, I can't get out and do things. No, I want to stay active, and I want to do it smart. I want to do it the right activities that will help me mechanically. But sometimes we get in our mind, I'm too old. And once you think you're too old because you're not going to give yourself a chance.
Yeah, that's been a lot of the issue is just having it that that mindset. I'm not too old, and then I keep pushing myself, and at some point, and when I injured my knee, I went through physical therapy and everything else because I wanted to continue to do things. I can do some things, but there's still some issues there. But I've been able to make it to where it's tolerable, and as long as I do what I'm supposed to do with braces and things like that, I'm doing a lot of things.
Last year, I made my granddaughter invited me to go swimming with her, and she wanted to show me how she jumped off the high diving board. I didn't say anything to anybody. I said, I'm going to do a 1.5 off the high. Hadn't done that in 25 years, and I thought, hey, there's nothing that tells me I can't do this. I was scared to death. Nobody knew but me. I'm thinking, geez, that's pretty high, and I haven't done this, and what if I hit the board and all this stuff? And I kind of finally said, okay, do it. And I went up and I sprung off the board, and I thought, oh, this feels good. Next thing you know, smack, I'm hitting the water. It was a 1.25, and everybody thought I was hurt. Well, fortunately, I had my daughter video this. And now that I've seen that, I could say, oh, you're too old. Don't ever do that. What are you doing 61 up on a high diving board? And I'm thinking now, okay, I see what I did wrong. There's no reason why I can't fix this. Next time I go, I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to make sure that I correct those things that caused me to not have a good dive. But I could have easily said, I'm too old for that. I'm never doing that again. I refuse to believe that.
Right. And that's what I go through with softball and then, getting in and out of a car and things like that. Dr. Timothy McKnight, he's here talking about factors that make us age quickly. And we're running out of time. And I just want to leave you with something. One thing I found out over the years, how you can tell you're getting older. When I was younger and fell down, everybody laughed. Okay. As I got older and fell down, I have everybody run over, are you okay? And that's how I can tell maybe I veered into the older age group.
Well, at this age, when you fall down, don't clutch your chest and scream out. They're gonna call the squad or try to shock your heart. So be careful.
That's true. That's a good point. Dr. Timothy McKnight, thanks for coming in today. And it was, as always, it's been great to talk to you and get some of those views out. And a lot of people have the same views as all of us, and that's the way to get it out, is getting you on the air and talk about it here.
Great. My pleasure.
All right. Thanks. You've been listening to the 830 High Beam, and it was been brought to you by Mako's Pharmacy. Mako's offers their customers and community free assistance with comparing and selecting a plan based on your specific prescription needs.